Hi everyone, welcome to Matt's Uke Theory videos. This week we're going to be looking at chord progressions. We're going to start with the 1-4-5 progression, which is probably the most important chord progression in all of modern music. And then later on we're going to have a look at 2-5-1 progressions, which are the building blocks for jazz music, but later on evolved to become useful in modern pop music as well. Now, chord progressions are literally just a series of chords that sound harmonically interesting together. So basically, chords that sound good together when you play them. And these have been used and loved and exploited for hundreds of years, from songwriters to composers, to create some really brilliant pieces of music. One of the first ever chord progressions to become really popular, and it particularly used in classical music, was the 1-5 progression. So ignoring the 4 for a minute, but just going between the first and the 5th chord. Now the 5th chord, if it's played as a 4-part chord, if you're not sure what that is, look at my ukulele video, go back and watch it on chord building. The 4-part chord for this one, the 5th chord in the key of C, is a G7. The 4-part chord for all of these 5 chords is a 7th chord, a dominant 7th chord. And by playing that chord, the 5th chord in any scale, as a 7th chord, like a G7 rather than a G major, it creates tension. And that tension really wants to resolve back to the 1 chord in the key of C, that's C. So that kind of tension and resolution was incredibly important in all kinds of music for creating movement, a feel of movement in music. For instance, Vivaldi's Four Seasons Spring features, the start of it is largely just based on the 1 and the 5 chords. Da 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 C C C C C C C C C C C C and G7 and C C C and so on and so forth. The tension between that 1 and 5 chord. So let's have a look at how that was used in popular music. As I say, the C chord makes you feel at home. Let's have a look at another chord combination. I'm just going to circle around some chords in the key of C, and just notice that when I get back to this chord here, we call it the tonic. It feels rested. The song feels either finished or rested. So, singing a song, here's a C and an A minor 2, then an F chord, and how about a G7, which creates tension, which makes us want to go back to C. So there we have it, the C feels at home, the 5 chord creates tension. Let's have a look at a songwriter that used this in popular music. Brian Wilson, brilliant songwriter. He is a brilliant songwriter, but for his song Surfing USA, he actually stole the chords from Chuck Berry and Sweet Little 16. But, here we go. What he ended up with is this progression. A 5-1, 5-1, 4-1, 5-1. Now, let's keep this in the key of C. Let's write that down, key of C. So in the key of C, all of the 1 chords are C, right? And all of the 5 chords are G, but because we want that lovely tension of the 4-part chord, we're going to play G7. Now, there's one other chord here, isn't there, that we haven't looked at, this 4 chord. The 4 chord in most music, especially in a kind of modern pop context, I tend to think about it as the change chord. It's a chord that creates a bit of movement in music, but without having the kind of extreme tension of the 5 chord. I'll give you an example. Lots of folk songs just go between 1 and 4. Singing a folk song, we need a change, so I'll go to F, which is the 4 chord, back to C. Notice that relationship, it's not too offensive, just a little change. It's not too different, just the 4 chord, and then we're back to the 1 chord. And then if I want the tension, and the tension tension comes from the 5 chord that brings us back to the 1 chord. So that 4 chord is just about creating a little bit of change. And you'll see it in this song. If that 4 chord wasn't there, it would be really boring. Now the 4 chord in the key of C is just an F, just a bog standard F major. Now, this gives us our chord to Surfing USA. Now, Surfing USA is a really lovely example of a 1-4-5 progression because it really uses the tension of this 5 chord wanting to go back to the 1 chord all the way through, which you'll see. 2 important points about 1-4-5 progressions. We call them 1-4-5 progressions because they use the 1st, the 4th and the 5th chord from any chord family or key. They don't have to be played in that order. A 1-4-5 progression doesn't have to be C, F, G or G, C, D. It can be in any order. We call a 1-4-5 progression a song which uses the 1-4-5 song really. And secondly, the reason that we're using Roman numerals, I explained this in an earlier video, but the reason is just not to get confused with other numbers, like perhaps the bar numbers, or even like the 7 after the G7. It would just get too confusing. So that's why we use the Roman numerals. Quite often these are referred to as Nashville numbers, because that's why they were invented. Let's have a look at Surfing USA then. I'll turn like this so you can play along. If you've got your uke, pick it up. You can play along with me. Don't worry about counting bars or anything like that. Just change chords as my fingers do. I'm going to start on a G7. Here we have some tension that makes us want to go to the 1 chord. Then we have some more tension that makes us want to go back to the 1 chord. Now the song would be really boring if it just did that over and over. So what did I was going to say Brian Wilson, but let's say Chuck Berry. What did he add? The 4 chord. Then we have a little change and we're back to the 1 chord. And then we have our tension and we're back to the 1 chord. Back to the top. So we have our 5 chord. The tension takes us to 1. And another 5 chord. The tension takes us to 1. And then for some changes, the 4 chord brings us back to 1. Here's the tension of the 5 chord. Then we're back to 1. Play along if you like. If everybody had an ocean across the USA, then everybody be surfing like California. See them wearing their Huarache sandals too, a bushy blonde hairdo, surfing USA. I've sung that like a million times and I still forget the words every time, but you get the idea. 5 chord release, 5 chord release, a little bit of a change, and then a 1 chord. Now, what if we wanted to play this chord, this exactly the same song, but we wanted to play it in a different key? This will really help you transposing music. Transposing music just means taking it from one key to another. And this is the brilliant thing about understanding songs in the context of these Nashville numbers rather than the specific chords, because you can play them in any key. We'll do it together now. Let's play this in the key of G. Here's our G major scale written out from left to right. And the 1 chord in G major is G. So all of those become a G. The 5 chord is D. And because we want the 4-part 5 chord, gosh, too many numbers, right? But just know that this 5 chord is quite often played as a dominant 7. And that would be a D7. And then the 4 chord, just like in the key of C, the 4 chord is the 4th one along, which is a C. So now we have exactly the same thing, but in a different key. So we could do D7, we could do our barred 1 or 2-0-2-0, okay? And then that goes back to a G. You could do your open D7 chord, and then you're back is C, back to G, and then our D7 again, and then we're back to G. If everybody had an ocean across the USA, everybody be surfing like California. Da 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 da. Oh, I completely mucked that up. C next. Da 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 da. Everybody's gone surfing, surfing USA. Now I can't sing that in that key terribly well at all. It's way too high for me. Everybody be surfing. Sounds horrible. But that's a really good example of why we change keys of music. For me, in the key of C, that's a lot more comfortable to sing. Let's have a look at one more. Let's do it in the key of F. Okay, probably the third most common key in ukulele music. In the key of F, this is just the F major scale written out. The F major scale has one flat. Every key, remember, has a certain amount of sharps or flats. G has one sharp. F has one flat. C has no sharps or flats at all. So in a key of F, the one chord is F, right? The 5 chord is C, but we're going to play that as a C7, just like we did with all the other ones. And the 4 chord is B flat. Now, if you're not sure about B flat is this one, where we bar the first fret and we put 2 fingers down here. From nose to toes, we have 3, 2, 1, 1. You can also play it like this. Okay. If you really desperately find that difficult, you could always play a G minor 7 and probably get away with it, which is the bottom 2 strings of the first fret and then this finger up here. But if you can manage this one over the top, you can have a B flat. Okay. F, you know, I'm sure. And C7 is this one down in the corner. Now we're going to play exactly the same song. Notice that will still work, but just with different chords. So we have the tension of C7, which goes back to F, and then the tension of the 5 chord takes us back to F. Just checking. Then we have the 4 chord, and we go back to F, and then the tension of the 5 chord, and back to F. Okay, so what I recommend is taking a really easy song like something like Surfing USA, which uses the 1-4-5 progression, and try it in some different keys. It means that when these key signatures come up in one of your books or a ukulele club, you find them much easier to play. Now, just to finish off, let's have a look at a common thing that is added to the 1-4-5 progression to turn it into something else. A really common thing to do, and one of the most common chord progressions, is the 1-4-5-6 progression. We add the 6 chord. Okay. Now the 6 chord is just the 6th along in any key. In this case, it's these. Now, if you remember back to my chord building videos, if you haven't watched it, please go and check it out. It's worth looking. The 6th chord is normally a minor chord. In fact, if you stay in the key, it really should be a minor chord. Okay. So, if we then put these chords together in a key, let's have a look. We'll do it in C, C, F, G, and A minor. 1, 4, 5, 6. That's one of the most common chord progressions that you'll ever play, this one, and a lot of modern music is played using this. The reason why this 6th minor chord in any key tends to add a touch of melancholy, but not half as much melancholy as, say, the 3 chord. Hear how melancholy and sad that is. Whereas A minor, okay, not half as melancholy. So this is just added to add a little bit of variety into this chord progression, a touch of melancholy, and this has been used by songwriters for years and years, really popularised in the 50s and 60s, this one. Now, if we arrange this in a different order, let's play C, G, A minor, F. Okay, so now we've got 1, 5, 6, 4. This is one of the most common modern chord progressions that you'll ever get. Let's do C and then a G, A minor, and F. This was used, one of the most famous songs that's played on ukulele again and again by Jason Mraz. I can't sing that one because it's far too high. And I think it's more like this, isn't it? I won't hesitate no more, it cannot wait, I'm yours. What's the, oh, loads of other ones. Your lipstick stains on the back side of my left side brains. That's start of Hey Soul Sister, isn't it, by Train? So loads and loads of popular music use this progression. I'm going to sign off there for this video, and in the next one we're going to look at another really important chord progression, 2-5-1. See you there.